in the bustling studio of Good Morning America. The lights shone brightly as the audience settled in for another exciting morning show segment, with the familiar theme music playing in the background and the hosts greeting viewers with their usual charm and enthusiasm. But on this particular day, something felt different in the air, a subtle tension that hinted at the drama about to unfold involving country music superstar Blake Shelton and the seasoned anchor George Stephanopoulos, who had invited Blake to discuss his latest album release and his personal life, including his high-profile relationship with Gwen Stefani. But as the cameras rolled and the interview began, Blake appeared relaxed at first, cracking jokes about his ranch life in Oklahoma and sharing anecdotes from his time on The Voice, where he had mentored countless aspiring singers. Yet George, known for his probing questions, steered the conversation toward more controversial topics, such as Blake's past comments on politics and his views on certain social issues that had sparked backlash online. And Blake, usually laid back, started to show signs of discomfort, shifting in his seat and offering short responses, while the audience watched intently, unaware that this seemingly routine celebrity chat was on the verge of turning into a heated confrontation that would make headlines across the entertainment world, with social media buzzing about the unexpected clash. And as George pressed further, asking about Blake's alleged feuds with other artists and his stance on industry changes, Blake's smile faded, replaced by a furrowed brow, setting the stage for what would become one of the most talked-about moments in morning television history, a moment where egos clashed and tempers flared under the bright studio lights, leading to an exit that no one saw coming. But let's delve deeper into how it all started, with Blake arriving at the ABC studios early that morning, greeted by producers who briefed him on the segment's flow, emphasizing light-hearted banter. Yet George had his own agenda, prepared with research that included old interviews and tweets, aiming to uncover layers beneath Blake's affable persona. And as the two sat across from each other, the initial exchange was cordial, with George complimenting Blake's musical achievements, from his chart-topping hits like God's Country to his Grammy nominations. But soon the questions turned personal, touching on Blake's divorce from Miranda Lambert and how it influenced his songwriting, which Blake handled gracefully at first, sharing how music had been his outlet during tough times. Yet the atmosphere shifted when George brought up rumors of tension between Blake and other country stars, implying that Blake's success had bred jealousy, and Blake countered with a laugh, saying the industry was big enough for everyone. But George's follow-up, suggesting Blake's comments were hypocritical given his own competitive nature on The Voice, struck a nerve, making Blake pause and respond more sharply, defending his coaching style as passionate rather than cutthroat. And as the segment progressed, the back-and-forth intensified, with the audience sensing the growing unease, whispering among themselves, while producers in the control room exchanged worried glances, realizing this interview was veering off script in a way that could either boost ratings or spell disaster. And indeed, it was heading toward the latter, as Blake's frustration mounted with each pointed query from George, who seemed determined to peel back the layers of celebrity facade, all while the clock ticked on live television, building to a crescendo that would culminate in a shocking departure from the set, leaving viewers stunned and sparking endless speculation about what really happened behind the scenes that day. As the interview delved deeper, George Stephanopoulos, with his journalistic background honed from years covering politics and high-stakes news, didn't hold back, transitioning from Blake's music career to more sensitive territory, questioning the authenticity of his public image as the down-to-earth guy next door, suggesting that his lavish lifestyle contradicted the humble roots he often sang about in songs like Austin and All Red. And Blake, feeling cornered, retorted that his success was hard-earned, coming from a small-town upbringing in Ada, Oklahoma, where he learned the value of perseverance through odd jobs and early rejections in Nashville. But George pushed on, referencing a recent controversy where Blake had been accused of insensitivity in a social media post about rural America versus urban elites, implying it alienated fans, and Blake defended himself vigorously, explaining that his words were taken out of context and that he stood by his beliefs in traditional values, which resonated with his core audience. Yet the exchange grew more animated, with George's calm demeanor contrasting Blake's rising voice, as he emphasized that celebrities have a responsibility to be mindful of their influence, and Blake shot back that journalists like George often twisted narratives for clicks and views, accusing the media of sensationalism that harmed real people, and this accusation hung in the air, prompting George to ask if Blake felt the press was unfair to him specifically, citing examples from his past relationships and how they were dissected publicly, which Blake admitted was painful but part of the fame game, though he stressed that personal matters should remain private, especially regarding his children and family life with Gwen, whom he described as his rock and inspiration for tracks like Nobody But You. But George, sensing an opening, inquired about rumors of strain in their marriage due to busy schedules, which Blake firmly denied, calling it baseless gossip, and the tension escalated as George brought up Blake's political endorsements, asking how they aligned with his diverse fan base, and Blake, known for his conservative leanings, expressed frustration at being labeled, saying he supported causes he believed in, like veterans and farmers, without apology. But George's follow-up on specific policies drew a line, with Blake warning that the interview was straying too far from music promotion into ambush territory, and the audience, now fully engaged, applauded sporadically, some in support of Blake's candor, others appreciating George's tough questions, while backstage, Gwen Stefani reportedly watched from a green room, concerned about the direction, and as the commercial break approached, the two men stared each other down, with George maintaining composure and Blake clenching his jaw, a clear sign that the clash was far from over, promising more fireworks in the next segment, where things would truly heat up, leading to the infamous exit that shocked everyone involved. But to understand the build-up, one must consider Blake's history of outspokenness, from his Twitter feuds to his unfiltered interviews, which often endeared him to fans but ruffled feathers in polished media circles, and George, with his experience interviewing world leaders, treated this like any other probe, unaware or perhaps fully aware that Blake wouldn't back down easily, creating a perfect storm of personalities clashing on national TV, with implications that rippled through the entertainment industry, sparking debates on celebrity interviews and boundaries. The turning point came swiftly after the commercial break, as George Stephanopoulos reopened the discussion with a pointed remark about Blake Shelton's recent comments on cancel culture, suggesting that Blake's humor sometimes crossed lines into insensitivity, referencing a joke from a concert that had gone viral for the wrong reasons, and Blake, now visibly agitated, leaned forward and challenged George directly, asking why the focus was on negativity when his career was built on positivity and entertainment, emphasizing his charitable work with organizations like the Boys Girls Clubs and his efforts to support up-and-coming artists through his Olay Red bars. But George countered by saying accountability was key in today's climate, drawing parallels to political figures he had interviewed who faced similar scrutiny, which Blake dismissed as comparing apples to oranges, arguing that as a musician, his role was to create joy, not navigate political minefields, and the debate intensified when George brought up Blake's friendship with controversial figures in the industry, implying guilt by association, and Blake fired back, accusing George of gotcha journalism that prioritized drama over substance, his voice rising as he recounted instances where media outlets had misrepresented his words, leading to unnecessary backlash, and the studio audience gasped at the raw exchange, with some cheering Blake's defense while others shifted uncomfortably, sensing the interview spiraling out of control, and producers attempted subtle signals to steer back to lighter topics, like Blake's upcoming tour dates or his new single. But the momentum was unstoppable, as George pressed on about Blake's views on gun rights, a hot-button issue that Blake had spoken about passionately in the past, defending Second Amendment rights based on his rural lifestyle, and George, with a measured tone, questioned the impact on public safety, citing statistics from recent events, which Blake rebutted with personal stories of responsible ownership, but the back-and-forth devolved into interruptions, with both men talking over each other, creating a chaotic atmosphere on live TV that had viewers at home glued to their screens, tweeting in real time about the unfolding drama, and amid the heated words, Blake alluded to feeling ambushed, claiming the pre-interview agreement was for a fun chat, not an interrogation. and George assured him it was all in good faith. But the trust was eroded, leading Blake to question the integrity of the show, a bold move that stunned George, who paused briefly before responding that tough questions were part of journalism, and this philosophical clash highlighted their differing worlds. So Blake's rooted in entertainment and George's in hard news, amplifying the conflict. As Blake's frustration boiled over into visible anger, his hands gesturing emphatically, while George remained seated calmly, notebook in hand, and whispers from the crew indicated concern about time constraints. Yet the segment extended, captivated by the intensity, setting the scene for the explosive climax where Blake would make his shocking decision to exit. But before that, the argument touched on even more personal ground, with George asking about Blake's sobriety journey and how it affected his music, a topic Blake had been open about but felt was being weaponized here, responding emotionally about his growth and the support from fans, which humanized him but also fueled his resentment toward the probing, making this one of the most memorable confrontations in GMA history. With the clash reaching its peak, Blake Shelton's patience wore thin as George Stephanopoulos continued to probe into areas Blake deemed off-limits, such as speculative rumors about his business ventures failing or conflicts with record labels over creative control, and Blake, red-faced and animated, slammed his fist lightly on the armrest, declaring that enough was enough, that he came to promote his art, not defend his life choices to someone who didn't understand the music world. And George, unflinching, suggested that public figures invite scrutiny by sharing so much online, referencing Blake's active social media presence where he often posted candid moments from his farm or with his stepkids, which Blake argued was about connecting authentically with fans, not inviting judgment, and the audience erupted in a mix of applause and murmurs, divided in their allegiances, as the energy in the studio crackled with electricity, prompting security to stand by discreetly, while co-hosts like Robin Roberts watched from the sidelines, ready to intervene if needed. But the verbal sparring continued, with Blake accusing George of bias rooted in his political background, claiming the questions were slanted to portray him negatively, and George defended his impartiality, citing his track record of fair interviews with celebrities and politicians alike. But Blake wasn't buying it, retorting with examples of other stars who had walked out of similar setups, implying he might follow suit, a hint that foreshadowed the dramatic exit. And as the argument circled back to Blake's relationship with Gwen, George innocently asked about their collaborative music projects, but Blake perceived it as another dig, snapping that their love story was genuine and not fodder for ratings, his voice cracking with emotion as he spoke of the challenges they overcame, from public scrutiny to blending families, and this vulnerability momentarily softened the tension. But George seized the opportunity to ask about future plans, which Blake evaded, steering back to his album, desperately trying to regain control. Yet the damage was done, with the interview now a full-blown spectacle that had online forums lighting up with live reactions, fans defending Blake as a victim of media overreach while critics praised George for holding him accountable. And in the midst of this, Blake glanced at his watch, realizing the segment had overrun, and muttered under his breath about wasted time, which the microphones picked up, adding to the awkwardness, and George attempted to wrap up gracefully, thanking Blake for his time, but Blake interrupted, standing up abruptly and removing his microphone, announcing he was done with this circus, a move that left George speechless and the audience in shock, as cameras captured the moment in real time, with producers scrambling to cut to commercial, but not before Blake stormed off the set, brushing past stagehands and heading toward the exit, his boots echoing in the suddenly silent studio, marking the shocking culmination of the heated clash that would dominate entertainment news for weeks, revealing layers of frustration on both sides and sparking broader conversations about celebrity media dynamics. In the immediate aftermath of Blake Shelton's abrupt exit from the Good Morning America set, the studio descended into a whirlwind of confusion and chatter, with George Stephanopoulos composing himself quickly, addressing the camera with a professional apology for the unexpected turn, assuring viewers that such passionate discussions were part of live TV's unpredictability, while behind the scenes, producers rushed to Blake's dressing room in an attempt to coax him back, but he was already on his way out of the building, phone in hand, likely calling his publicist or Gwen Stefani to vent about the ordeal. And as word spread, social media exploded with hashtags like #BlakeWalksOut and #GMADrama, fans rallying in support of Blake, praising his stand against invasive questioning, while others criticized him for lacking poise under pressure. And George, in a post-show statement, expressed regret if the questions offended but stood by his journalistic duty, emphasizing that interviews should challenge and inform, not just flatter, which ignited debates among media experts about the fine line between probing and provoking. And Blake, later that day, took to his own X account to share his side, posting a cryptic message about respecting boundaries and focusing on music over gossip, which garnered millions of likes and shares, amplifying the story's reach. And entertainment outlets like TMZ and E! News pounced on the footage, analyzing every gesture and word, speculating on what triggered the final straw, from the political queries to the personal digs. And insiders revealed that Blake had felt blindsided, having expected a promotional puff piece rather than a grilling, a mismatch in expectations that highlighted the evolving nature of celebrity interviews in an era of accountability. And as the day unfolded, Gwen Stefani publicly supported Blake via Instagram, sharing a photo of them together with a caption about standing strong, which warmed fans' hearts and shifted some narrative toward their enduring bond. But the revelations didn't stop there, with reports emerging of prior tension between Blake and ABC executives over past appearances, suggesting this clash was brewing. And George, in interviews that followed, reflected on the incident as a learning moment, acknowledging the need for sensitivity with non-political guests, while Blake channeled the energy into his music, announcing a surprise single inspired by the experience, titled Walk Away Strong, which climbed charts rapidly, turning negativity into triumph. And the shocking exit became a case study in PR courses, illustrating how such moments can boost visibility if handled well, with Blake's team spinning it as authenticity winning out, ultimately revealing that beneath the glitz, celebrities like Blake grapple with the same frustrations as anyone, making him more relatable in the eyes of many. Reflecting on the broader implications of Blake Shelton's shocking GMA exit following his heated clash with George Stephanopoulos, the incident served as a catalyst for industry-wide discussions on the ethics of morning show interviews, prompting networks to review their guest preparation protocols to ensure clearer communication about topics, avoiding future ambushes that could lead to walkouts. And Blake, in subsequent appearances on friendlier platforms like late-night shows with Jimmy Fallon, joked about the experience while subtly critiquing the format, reinforcing his image as the unfiltered everyman, which only boosted his album sales and tour ticket demands, as fans flocked to support him in solidarity. And George Stephanopoulos, undeterred, continued his role on GMA with the same rigor, earning praise from journalism peers for not shying away from tough questions, though he admitted in a podcast that the encounter taught him about adapting styles for entertainment figures versus politicians, fostering a more nuanced approach in future segments. And the revealed details from behind-the-scenes leaks painted a fuller picture, including how Blake's team had requested certain topics be off-limits, a request allegedly overlooked, leading to the escalation, and public figures from both music and media weighed in, with some like Taylor Swift subtly nodding to similar experiences via social posts, while others like Oprah praised the authenticity of raw moments on TV. And as time passed, the clash faded into entertainment lore, referenced in comedy sketches and memes, but its legacy endured in how it humanized both Mina Blake as passionate and protective, George as dedicated and unflappably reminding viewers that even polished broadcasts can unravel into real emotion. And Blake's career trajectory post-incident soared, with new collaborations and ventures, including expanding his ranch brand, proving resilience in the face of controversy, while GMA's ratings spiked temporarily from the buzz, illustrating the double-edged sword of viral drama. And ultimately, the shocking revelation of the heated exchange underscored the evolving relationship between celebrities and media, where boundaries are tested, egos bruised, but stories told, leaving an indelible mark on pop culture.